So we have had such an amazing weekend of racing, and my god, I can't wait to talk about it because there's a lot to get through in this episode. So here is everything we have learned from the Baku Grand Prix. So first off, let's talk about my opinion of it all, and hands down that has to be top 3 races of this season so far. Obviously a little bit of McLaren bias comes into play when Piastri, any of my boys, Piastri or Norris win, I'm always happy for them. But the way Piastri won with that immense dive bomb, channeling his inner Daniel Ricciardo like it was still Ricciardo in that seat. What a move. Not too bad for a number 2 driver. So the first one is we have a new crowned World Constructor Champion, and that is McLaren F1. What a long time coming. McLaren haven't won this since 98. So this is a huge achievement for them. Obviously they didn't get it in 2007 because of Spygate. So that was a little bit of a damper back then. But considering what giants of the sport McLaren are, and they haven't won a World Constructors Championship since then, I wouldn't put it past them to bottle it now that I'm saying it. But they have a 20-point gap to Red Bull, even more to Ferrari. The only thing that could happen is if genuinely Piastri and Norris start crashing into each other. And honestly, that physically can't happen because of papaya rules, or just because they've put Norris as their number 1 driver now. However, another thing we have learned is that Red Bull will most likely finish 3rd place in the Constructors. If Ferrari carry on with their form at the minute, it's going to be McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes. And honestly, if Mercedes didn't get so unlucky at the start of the season, and with George Russell's DNFs, we could be seeing Red Bull in 4th place this Constructors Championship. Who would have thought that going into the first race weekend this season? For the first 6 races, when Verstappen dominated as per usual, it was the status quo. Not anymore, my god. Then another highlight, like I mentioned, not bad for a number 2 driver. Of course, this was the first weekend Andrea Stella basically came out and said Lando Norris is the number 1 driver till the end of the season. Oscar Piastri is going to help him out. Now, of course, Norris had his own phenomenal race I'll talk about later. He even said it himself, this one feels a lot better. Now, not even just for the team radio and team order stuff between him and Norris in Hungary, but purely because he deserved it on pace, keeping behind Leclerc the entire race, which at most points Leclerc looked a lot quicker, but for once it was a masterclass in strategy from McLaren. Again, Norris helping out Piastri with Perez. I assure you that will come back to help Norris in the long running. When Piastri has to do the same thing for Norris, he'll definitely be doing it for his teammate. But honestly, it's ridiculous how close Norris and Piastri are in the championship. Norris doesn't get his act together and start getting those wins and actually push Verstappen. We could see Piastri ending up in 2nd place after all of this. Then, like I mentioned, an incredible recovery drive from Lando Norris. Of course, starting from 15th, technically 17th, before penalties and pit lane starters. But 15th to 4th place. And the big one, beating Max Verstappen fair and square. What an achievement. Obviously, he got a little bit lucky with the safety car, meaning Verstappen didn't get that fastest lap, but oh my god, McLaren are genuinely the fastest car. I'm really excited to see what they do in Singapore, because we know what they're like at slower speed tracks, Zandvoort and Hungary, so I'm very excited to see what they can do. But what a drive from Norris. That was a championship drive. Still gaining points on your championship rival when you start 15th, it's gonna get very close. Then we move further back on the grid, and let me just say, we don't have to move that far back anymore. Double Williams points positions. 10 points scored in that race. I kid you not, even before the crash between Perez and Sainz, we had double Williams points. It would have only been 3 points, but they got promoted up to 7th and 8th. But all I'm saying is a masterclass from Carlos Sainz. He doesn't care about Ferrari anymore. He wants to give his new team those 10 points, and my god, did he do it. Comment down below whose fault you thought it was. I generally do think it was a racing incident, as Sainz, you could see, was following the racing line. However, he was turning a little bit more into Perez. However, Perez himself had plenty of room to, swivel about. We saw Leclerc and Piastri going at it completely fine. It gets to those two, first incident, and they're in the barrier. Not really surprised with Perez from that, and not really surprised with Sainz as well. He can be a little bit temperamental with those crashes as well. But that isn't to take away from Williams' day. They were 100% made the right choice getting rid of Logie Bear. Sadly, he just wasn't performing. And Colapinto is a phenomenal driver. He deserves that Sauber seat, and I know he's talking to Binotto, and I really hope he does get that seat. And then finally for the race, Bearman 100% is one to look out for in 2025. He completely outdid Hulkenberg most of this weekend, got extremely unlucky not to beat Hulkenberg out the weekend. He didn't really get screwed over by his strategy. His race pace just sort of dwindled, and Hulkenberg, with that bit of experience, that's how you know he's got experience. He was able to keep his tyres good for longer. And Bearman, of course, he was very fast. He looked very good. Obviously, he qualified P10 technically, again, from the pit lane starters. But one for the future, 100%. I'm really excited to see him in that Haas. I really thought he would struggle, him and Antonelli. But from seeing both of those performances now in Jeddah and Baku, and of course Colapinto coming in doing bits as well, I really do think Bearman and Antonelli, they're not going to struggle one bit. They're going to get right up to speed. And then finally, for this video, let's have a look into the championship. Because of course, we still have quite a few races to go. And theoretically, it is still doable. Now, all of these points I've tallied up are if Norris comes first and Verstappen comes second in every single race coming up. So there's a 59-point gap, which means if Norris comes first and Verstappen comes second with each event coming up, including the sprint races, that would mean Norris loses the championship by 7 points, 453 to Verstappen's 460. However, if you include fastest laps from the next 7 races, then things get interesting because they end up equal on points. Now, of course, this is quite ambiguous to mention because, first of all, I don't think Norris is winning every single race coming up to the end. However, Norris is going to get bigger jumps in points than 8 or 7 points to Verstappen, considering at the minute Verstappen can't even scratch the top 4. And if he doesn't even get a top 3 finish ending the season off, all Norris has to do realistically is get second and first consistently, and then he'll make it without a doubt. He just can't have a DNF. And of course, if Verstappen has a DNF, I think it opens up the championship to 2 other people, Piastri and Charles Leclerc. Of course, Ferrari winning a championship again would be brilliant for the sport. However, this one's a little bit far-fetched. Now, Norris is far-fetched, but Leclerc is a completely different situation. I do think if Leclerc manages to win the championship, 100% without a doubt, one of the most amazing upsets in history. But I do just think it's a little bit too much for Leclerc. Too much has to happen with Norris and Verstappen both DNFing, colliding into each other most probably, and him to beat Piastri coming up. I really do think Piastri will be the one who actually overtakes Leclerc, but both of them just 2 little races to go. But hey, let's see what they do in 2025, because I generally do think we could have a showdown between Piastri, Norris and Leclerc for the championship. And I mean, my God, Hamilton's going to be in that Ferrari, so potentially Hamilton as well. I'm so looking forward to 2025. But anyway, that is how the championship looks. It still looks like it's in Verstappen's hands for now. If he can just get top 4, top 5 finishes and hope Norris doesn't win, he'll be fine. But that's what he needs. But anyway, coming up to Singapore, I'm extremely excited. It's one of my favorite tracks on the grid. It's one of my favorite street circuits. Of course, there's not going to be a lot of overtaking. We'll see how everyone does in quali. My predictions are Norris first, Piastri second, Leclerc third. I really do think it's going to be a McLaren track. But what do you guys think down below? And what did you guys think of Baku? I'm so excited for the rest of the season. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed this video about everything that we learned from the Baku Grand Prix. Thank you very much, and goodbye.